Hi, guys. Welcome to this episode of the Trainer Feed. We are your hosts. I am Angel Sanchez. We got David Bravo up on top. And we got Jack. No, just kidding. Jacques. De la Mayhew. Shout out to the Yankees. Today's guest is Mr. Collin Carroll. He is a author, personal trainer, volunteer firefighter, EMT, triathlete, all that stuff. So how are you guys feeling really quick? And then we'll start it off. We'll kick it off. We'll bring him on.
I'm pretty good. I finally started getting into Warzone with you guys. And
that's a disaster.
Yeah,
we played last night a little bit. He was the only one winning the gulags. I was asked.
Yeah, man. I was 2 for 2 in the gulag last night, and I think I was 1 for 2 the other time I was in. So I was all right. I was 100% last night for once.
You know, I'm spectating him, and he's running around. He's like, doesn't know what's happening, and I'm like, next to you, to your left. What?
Got him.
All right.
Oh my God.
Take it easy with the mic. The mic is a little.
Easy.
It has some high peaks. All right, let's bring Collin Carroll. Let's bring Collin in.
Crazy.
Hello.
Hey, Collin.
Yo, what's up?
What's up, guys?
Deal. Oh man, you're the first guest that we've had that has the headphones on. So have you taken a look at our YouTube or?
The first guest with the headphones? How about the first guest with the head and the rude microphone? Official. I did do this just for you guys. I was like, this podcast, this is basically late night with Stephen Colbert for personal trainers.
My God.
Hooked up with the best of the best. You guys didn't send this to all of your other guests?
Stop.
Yeah.
Can't let everyone
Guess
know.
it just didn't make it through. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The budget for this podcast is absurd. It's
all the mics and all the headsets were just delayed because of COVID, and
right. That's why everyone didn't
post
get it.
office kind of fucked it all up.
Yeah, I see, Jock. You have Jock is holding a microphone from I think a Korean karaoke bar that he took home.
No, long story short, I have a stand and everything. But because I'm pretty much just me and the dog now, I normally have to do this in the kitchen and everything. Now I can do this wherever I want. So I'm just like chilling in freestyle. So
yeah, I kind of like it.
Yeah, it's different for the first 40 episodes. So
yeah, everyone's got their own setup. Hey, I'm not judging.
So thanks for jumping on the podcast.
Yeah.
I know that we have a lot to talk about, but the one thing that we're really excited about is your book, which I have right here.
Yes. You might have been I think you literally got your copy before I got mine because you ordered Prime from Amazon. Wow. It's got my name on it and everything. Yep. That's how you know it's mine. And
all these is a signature. Did you model for these?
I didn't model for them. So there's on the cover of the book, for people who are audio exclusive, there are 3 little figures of someone doing a carrying movement, a climbing movement, and a running movement, which listeners, you will hear all about those 3 movements throughout this next hour. But there are little figures, little silhouettes, and they're taken from pictures on inside the book. Yeah, the graphic designer I worked with he's so good. He was so good. His name's Rudy, and he basically was just able to cut and paste those sort of figures, turn them into silhouettes, and put them on the front cover. So he did such a good job of them. I can't take any credit for anything besides the basic idea of the front cover. He did a really good job making sure it was minimal and pretty and everything that I could have wanted.
That is
nice.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm just super excited. And when I saw that it was ready to be purchased on Amazon, I didn't hesitate.
No, you didn't.
I wanted to grab it as soon as possible. I'm a slow reader. I'm still reading it. So, that was a little while ago.
You know what's so funny is and I appreciate that you're reading it at all, but I also
just
have
bought it.
You just bought it? Oh, thanks, David. Thank you.
Amazon Prime.
I will buy it. I guess I should say that.
Jock's the odd man.
It's called Fitness by Darwin.
Yes, Fitness by Darwin.
We didn't say the name.
3 evolution. Yeah, let me do the whole name and subtitle and everything. Fitness by Darwin: How 3 evolutionary movements will help you look better, get stronger, and avoid injury. And I have that memorized. I'm looking right at the camera as I've written it enough times
where I've memorized.
I sort of got it locked down. Yeah, so I had I was talking about it with some friends, and I basically have, for anyone who's interested, you can go to fitnessbydarwin.com and you can download the book for free on Google Drive, like the entire book, start to finish.
All right,
because
let me return it. Hold on.
Yeah, exactly, David. I don't know why you bought it. I don't know why Angel bought it. I would have gotten you guys a free copy. You have press copies.
No, I'm terrible with the Drive stuff. Just because like I have it.
I'd rather have a physical book.
I have like 10 books,
too.
like so many books on my tablet or whatever, and I just can't, like, I just don't read it enough because then I'm just like looking at screen time and I want to get away from that. So hard copy, paperback is where to go.
5G fucking up with your brain, giving you COVID. We can't be next to our phones.
Oh no.
Right. So shouts out.
Right
this podcast sponsored by QAnon. Everybody,
go
check out our QAnon page and our
follow my Parler.
Militia. Follow my militia. Parler.com/David. There's probably a Parler site like that. I'm not actually going to plug some random 3%er named David. I don't want to do that. Don't go to Parler.
No, let's talk about the book. Let's talk about the book. So where did the idea and the concept come from, and how did you, like, what was your process through having that from like in your head to on paper to in our hands? Yeah,
that's a great question. I'll talk about that in 1 second, because I started talking about essentially what we had been saying about getting through the actual book. I was talking about it with some friends, and one of their dads found out about it, downloaded it online. You can go to fitnessbydarwin.com, download the whole thing online. He downloaded it on Google Drive and read it literally that night, like the whole book, which it's not a hard, I don't think I write in a particularly challenging, scientific, arcane way. I try to make it really accessible, but he read the whole thing in a night, and basically this was, I think, last week, and we've already done, he was like, I'm in, I'm all in. Let's do some lessons. Let's do some sessions. And that's how I got my first client. So literally without me doing a single thing, someone's wanted to work on like a personal training level. So
wow,
it really is just, it's so great to have. I'm so lucky. And to your point, but I did put the work in. Like, I think I've been thinking about it. You guys worked with me at Equinox at the same time. And that I had a lot of my clients doing things like assisted pull-ups or real pull-ups or rows, some sort of lat pull downs. Those were really mainstays in my exercise sort of library. And I was sticking away from a lot of the other traditional weightlifting, some other traditional weightlifting exercises. A big part of that was because I just started noticing that, and I talk about this a little bit in the book, that people with shoulder injuries were totally fine or like a frozen shoulder, recovering from a frozen shoulder, totally fine to do certain exercises like, rows, lat pull downs, resistance band stuff. And certain other ones were really, really damaging. And I wasn't having them do those things at all. And I found that with those movements, things like lat pull downs and rows, they were seeing both health benefits, but also, aesthetic benefits. And that led to, okay, why is that the case? And living on the Upper West Side, I was so close to the American Museum of Natural History. I started going there, and that began getting weaved into this whole idea of why are certain movements better than other movements. Originally, I was thinking it was, and they're not unrelated, but maybe this is muscle size. Like, work your lats more than your pecs, because your lats are enormous compared to your pecs. Your latissimus dorsi make up these giant muscles all over your back, where the pecs are much smaller relatively. There's not as much research in the scientific literature about the size of muscles like lats versus blah, blah, blah. So I won't get into that, but that was the first iteration of work bigger muscles more and smaller muscles less. And that was too simplified. So I started going into the Hall of Human Origins and the American Museum of Natural History and reading scientific literature and just sort of slowly putting this stuff together while living at home with my parents here in Connecticut. And all that research started becoming a narrative, and that narrative started becoming what I thought was just going to be a few kind of throw off papers, like articles, something for like a journalist or a popular publication like that. And they ended up, I just kept finding more and more evidence of these three specific movements, and they hadn't been woven into a narrative that people could follow. Like, why do physical therapists so frequently refer shoulder pulling exercises to rehabilitate the shoulder? Why are certain exercises that strengthen the transverse abdominis, this big muscle, deep core muscle, why are so many of those, like, how do we train those? Why are those so good? And why are carrying movements so targeted for those? And how can we choose the best exercises? So it was just a waterfall of like really a lot of work over a long period of time, but it felt like I couldn't not think about it. And I just kept finding stuff and feeling like it had to be added. And there was so little that felt like it contradicted it that I just kept the ball rolling. And then lo and behold, there came a book.
That's awesome. I thought about a lot of things and I never manifested those things into like putting the pad to the paper pad to pen or fingers to keyboard to create something. But you have, so I think it's really impressive. And I know that I think these guys, we saw like your body of work. You also have some research articles as well. That's pretty good stuff. And it's pretty impressive, especially at your age too. How old are you again? You're 28 now?
Thanks, guys. I'm at 91 actually, but I moisturize.
Yeah. Oh, and that
was a delayed laugh. Man, that did not land.
No, that was the lag.
I'm 28, yeah. I'm 28. That was lag. All right, yeah, that's listeners, that was lag. He actually laughed very hard at that one.
His face was
Jacques was muted.
Jacques
was muted.
Oh, yeah, okay. Everyone laughed.
Why do you think there was such a gap, like you said earlier, that there hasn't been much, or I mean, there's been a lot of research, but no one has really put the narrative together about all these movements. Why do you think there was such a big gap?
And this is the craziest thing is evolution, just as an idea, is so in vogue right now, right? Like evolutionary ways to eat. Do you eat paleo? What did our ancestors eat? Pre-agricultural revolution, hunter-gatherer, diet. How about evolutionary psychology? How do we behave in groups? How do we behave in blah, blah, blah? There's just this remarkable body of work with evolution, and it's so sort of hip. I can't believe that there's some stuff about a kind of quote unquote hunter-gatherer lifestyle, but that talks about a single moment in time sort of for humans 40,000 years ago. And like, we should lift weights like they moved, but it forgets all of these millions of years that have gone into these specific movements. And like climbing, it's been 10 million years since our great ancestors have been climbing. And I just use that number arbitrarily, but not arbitrarily, but I'm saying about 10 million years, but we've been doing that for many, many millions of years. And part of my academic work argues that we probably climbed more than we even think as a way to, escape predators and access resources. Like there's nothing better for few things better for humans than fruit, and fruit grows on trees. So if you're going to get trees, then that's one of the easiest ways to obtain calories is to start climbing for those trees or to work cooperatively. Basically, I just don't think, to your original question, David, I just don't think that there was anybody who had my weird background, I guess, because psychologists train for years to become psychologists and then can have their Darwinian sort of spin on that. You go with dietitians have PhDs and have all of these other things and go based on that framework. But I think personal training hasn't, and even exercise physiology is based a lot in traditions, what movements exist and what workouts exist already and analyzing them and maybe how do they work for athletes? How do they work for the average person? How did they do all this? It's sort of, I guess I didn't feel like there was as much of an overlap in terms of actual personal trainers or people who have really worked one-on-one with clients in a sense where personal trainers have to do a lot. Like we have to create our own exercises. We have to literally every single day we're coming up with new stuff. We're not training for a specific event. We need to be able to modulate things. Strength and conditioning coaches for football teams work with football teams as strength and conditioning coaches. That's it. They are training football players to play football. We might have a marathon runner. Then our next client might be somebody who wants to, loses, like change their body composition. And then the next person wants to start gaining all this different muscle. So we need to have all of this more holistic mindset, I think, than a lot of the pros, like the kinesiologists and the physical therapists who work with a very niche set. And that, I think, lent itself to, well, personal trainers, no offense, personal trainers, but tend not to write books as frequently as PhDs in nutrition and in kinesiology. So I think I just kind of, I don't know. I think I just kind of got the right place. I was in the right place at the right time, where so much of this research has been published in these disparate fields, and I was able to kind of sew it together in a way that I think is easily digestible, and I would like to think very relevant for the average person and for the trainer to train the average person.
Yeah. I think with a lot of stuff like that and fitness trends, when it comes to, especially in the early 2000s with the introduction of CrossFit and quote unquote functional training and all that stuff, I think a lot of these new modalities of training, they're not new, but I think now people are more like, hey, let me have you do what we all used to do, or what's sort of like functional in terms of like pulling, pushing, lifting, carrying heavy shit, and going and lifting heavy. At least for me, there are a lot of people that don't want to necessarily lift 500 pounds. But do you think in the future, hopefully, that stuff like this doesn't die down, like a lot of those fad diets that happened earlier?
It's so funny. We've seen this, right? I mean, genuinely, when was the last time a Zumba class went big?
Yeah.
Right? And how big was Zumba? How big was Zumba?
There's one member that I still see, and not anymore because of COVID, but he would come in with her Zumba stuff going on, and you barely see those anymore.
You do the hoops?
No, not her. No, not her.
Wasn't? Oh, okay.
And what was before Zumba? Jazzercise? How many Jazzercise studios are? I mean, you'll see like one in New York, and it's just like the paint is peeling off the walls, and there's just not that many people.
There's a Lucille Roberts in the Bronx.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the one by where my parents are at. Yeah, and I'm like, shit, people still go in there. I think I saw a couple of people go in there once.
Well, that's the thing, is there are so many, and I again, just so it's out in the open, all exercise is better than no exercise. Any exercise is better than no exercise. Lifting heavy shit. Now I have my own sort of like perspective on that, where I don't think it's great to lift super heavy shit, and we can get into that for sure. But yeah, there are certain things that I think are not, you don't want to call them fad-ish, but there's a lot of psychology in how to create something that people want to consume in the fitness industry, rather than not even immerse themselves with, but just stay in contact with. I think people tend to want to look for the next big thing, whereas something like picking things up and putting things down, to, for lack of a better term, it's more timeless. Like you can always go back to that. Whereas, I mean, I don't want to cross any sort of brands that anyone might be affiliated, but let's call it Spirit Bike. If there is a small group fitness studio called Spirit Bike, where you had to, there was some loud music and you had very good looking
dim lights,
Spirit Bike, dim lights, people wearing spandex, and your Spirit Bike sense was up to not racked up to a 10 out of 10. Everyone was so into that, but it lends itself to becoming what's next. So you want to create something, I think, that isn't necessarily what's next. And that's why I needed so much research, and I owe so much to the scientists who published the papers that I use in my book. But you can say, hey, listen, here's the evidence. This has been around long before us. This will be around long after us. This is what the human body, these are the requirements the human body had to achieve to survive, and how it developed. But I think a lot of times these other things, it's what does the person next to you do? What does the person next to you do? I would love for that to not be the case for Fitness by Darwin. Yeah. I would love it to be more. A lot of it
has to do with, I think, instant gratification of what people want, right?
Sure.
It's like,
sure.
Like they're like, oh shit, this looks really cool, and look, this person has 8-pack abs. If I do this new thing, I'm gonna get it,
right?
And then the next thing comes along.
Right.
I think it's something that I do a lot with my clients, and I try to tell them is, at least for me, the simple, the better in a way. You don't have to really go crazy.
And I absolutely agree with that. I mean, fully and completely. And part of that is because if you really think about it, there's some argument, and I sort of am hoping to become a voice in this arena in the evolutionary biology sphere, what movements humans evolved to do. But there's very little debate that our deep ancestors were climbers. Like, you look at all of these different things where, have you ever seen like a 3-year-old climb? They're crazy at it, right? They're so good. Have you seen a
grip strength?
Crazy grip strength, crazy mobility in the hips, crazy strength in terms of just being able to use arms and legs together. So coordination to climb.
Pound for pound, they're strong as fuck.
And in other sort of movements, like, throwing, have you seen a kid try to throw a baseball at 3? Like, most of the time they fall. Like, they fall back further than they've thrown the ball. You're like, how did you create more momentum to go backwards than the ball went forwards? So climbing, so essential. Running, there's a lot of evidence, both sprinting and endurance running, and people probably argue about the techniques, but I think you'd be hard pressed to argue that we weren't at the very least sprinters, and likely use some sort of walking, running combo to traverse long distances. So that's how running came to be. That came after climbing. Then after that became carrying. If you killed something, what would you have to do? Pick it up and bring it back home. Or if you found something that was food, you'd have to pick it up and bring it back home. Mm-hmm. So those 3 movements, I think, are, as you said earlier, they're pretty simple to understand. And we have what I call an intramuscular memory for it. I use this term in the book. Muscle memory is something that an individual develops. A gymnast has very good muscle memory for gymnastics. They can orient themselves in the air to do all these aerials and crazy stuff. But intramuscular memory was developed over generations, which is why certain movements, you'll see people can just sort of do more innately than others, and can do more safely than others with less coaching than other movements. So it was the demand for a lot of these movements that shaped our species. And as a result, if we do those movements in the gym, we're probably going to, as I say, get healthier, get stronger, and look better.
Yeah, it's more on the instinctual level, right? Because when I was reading that chapter or reading that part, I was trying to imagine what that would be like. And it seems, there are certain examples of it, right? Like you use in the book. I think if you have a baby and then you put like your finger in the baby's palm, they're more likely to just like grab it, right? Like it's instinctual to just do things like that.
The palmar grasp reflex, exactly. And even now with your clients, have you guys had like a first time client and you've put them on, say, like a lat pull down machine? Mm-hmm. And I think for the most part, they're able to pretty much get it, right? You like pull the bar, and Angel's making a face like, sometimes you never know.
Yeah, I remember sometimes homie just slammed that thing into the top of his head. And I said, you don't want to crush your skull with the bar.
Right.
I thought that. I didn't think that needed an explanation, but it did.
There's definitely a difference between and you just feel so bad.
Most of them are fine.
Can be an intimidating place. Yeah, I think most people are pretty much fine.
I think Jacques knows the one that I'm talking about too.
Jacques is still laughing.
Who is it?
You don't know. I don't want to say no names.
His mic turned off.
It's not about that. But anyway.
I'm just trying not to laugh.
Yeah, but you get something like that. A lat pull down, I think, is pretty easy to understand and pick up. Whereas something like a less evolutionary in exercise, maybe like
a press, or
I would say, yeah, definitely. Presses, you see, how often do you have to, and how frequently do you have to correct clients' forms over and over on presses?
It's possibly one of the hardest ones to. It's one of the rarest ones that a client will get first time.
Right.
Most naturally. Because
we lack an intramuscular memory to press. We never really had to push things overhead. Whereas climbing is overhead pulling. We had to do that every which way all day. We had to be able to use our legs and our arms together. And I was working with this one new client with my friend's dad, and I gave him a pretty advanced climbing movement. And I don't even really cue him on where to put his feet, where to put his hands, because naturally, instinctively, he starts to get it. And he does it in a way that's not like with an overhead press or with a different sort of press. You might be like, okay, if you do that, like, do you ever say pack your scap? Like pack your scapula, lower your shoulder blade when you're pressing? Have you ever told clients that?
Sometimes.
Some sort of something where
yeah, like you have to coach them at the joint level.
Over exactly.
They don't understand, and they'll just do like elbow flexion, but they're not doing anything at the shoulder. So you'll have to say like squeeze your chest together. Some people never like don't understand what that means, right?
Right, because we lack this sort of intuitive understanding of the movement of a press compared to the movement of a pull. Because after you give someone an overhead pull, now this guy hit himself in the head, right? But he did it once, I'm guessing. He didn't just womp, 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 womp.
He had some
10 reps.
He had some
straight.
troubles.
Yeah, 10 reps. Oh, I'm really feeling the burn. That's a Simpsons joke.
Yeah, my head is feeling this.
Yeah, my
I think I actually
I'm
just
be sore tomorrow.
Yeah, I think I actually said, "Oh shit!"
Yeah,
one of those caught me off guard.
The gyme. What's a gyme?
I have a
Then he walks in. Oh, the gyme. Yeah, that's the Simpsons all the way through. They already did it, of course. But after that, did you tell that guy, don't hit your head with the bar? Yes. Or did he just sort of
very explicitly?
You said don't hit your head.
All right,
but he wasn't making that mistake.
Drop the bar
for
a second. Drop it. Let's just touch base. You need to walk around a little bit. Don't do that. That's not part of the.
That's not part of the.
Try to get him out of your presence, so you could be like, "What the fuck was happening?" Go take a walk.
No, this is not my client.
Well, if you compare that to climbing, like the lat pull down, I do compare to climbing. No one's going to climb a tree branch to get on top of a tree branch and bonk themselves in the head with it. They know that they need to go over it. The gym, it's a little bit less familiar, but how often do you have to keep queuing people up for like an overhead pull, for lat pull down? I'm guessing it's less frequent.
It's less frequent. I think the hard, if you were to say there was a difficult one, it would be rows, because some people just don't understand actually the movement of the scapula. So you have to, but that goes beyond just like the row example. That's just like, they don't know how to move their shoulders, and they probably don't know how to move their hips. They don't know how to articulate their joints. They don't have an understanding of that. That's
such a good point. And I think it's true. I think I found the same thing. And look at which one is more reflective of a climbing movement, of climbing a tree, of that sort of thing. Would you say it's an overhead pull or a horizontal pull, like a row?
Like a vertical.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the movement we need less cueing on, because we understand more readily. Oh, this is how I like this. I know this. My ancestors did this. My great granddaddy did this. So they have that sense. And as a result, the movement comes easier. As a result, you get more results. As a result, and I could go into I honestly think the health specifics are the most important thing. But Jock, it looks like you have something to.
Well, I was going to say, it's definitely less frequent that I have the corrections need to be made for the overhead or vertical pulling. But what is your first thought on or instincts when I see it done less functionally? I see it where the person will pull it, and then like the shoulder blade comes in, the shoulder hikes up, and they try to almost start doing like a dip. Like, what are your thoughts or thinking around that?
Muscle up. I actually, so this is the funny thing is, part of that comes to the fact that when we were climbing, and I'm going to sound like such a freak, but I've actually like climbed trees in the intervening years, both as an exercise thing and as to kind of get a sense for what that movement actually refers to, which is crazy because I don't have any experience climbing trees, but I was just able to kind of do it because, again, our body was shaped by it for so much. You go to a movement like a muscle up, we would never be moving that quickly in a tree. We would never be flinging ourselves up, because if you fall out of the tree, you're probably going to die, or you're going to get maimed, or you're going to have a really bad day, or our ancestors would have rather. So when it comes to that, we naturally should have more of like a slow, meaningful movement up. Like, I don't really do a muscle up. I do like a walking pull up, where I'll go on a squat rack. Squat racks a lot of times will have a pull-up bar above it. I'll grab the pull-up bar, and I'll sort of use my legs against the side to mimic that being like the tree trunk. The side of the squat rack is the tree trunk. And I sort of walk my feet up the sides while doing a pull-up, nice and slow, and then come back down. And
interesting.
One of the best exercises I've ever found. I mean, like the amount of core engagement, and I have a number of studies in the book that speak to this. The activity of like when you're climbing, they tried it with rock climbers, so a little bit different, but the movement of rock climbers to raise their legs out to the side, like to get up to a higher foothold, is comparable to a side plank, that level of muscular engagement. So when you start doing a walking pull-up, you're not just getting your back, you're not just getting your arms, you're hitting your entire abdominal system, and you're getting your hip mobility, and you're getting your ankle mobility, and you're getting your glute engagement. So like you can just stack these up, and it hits so many of these muscles because so many of these muscles had to work in tandem to execute these specific movements. And that's why when you see it, right, the person can do it fine. They can pull the lat pull down, you were saying, Jack, they can pull it below their chin, but then they start moving it towards a dip. Well, that's again, as we were climbing, we probably wouldn't have done that. If we were actually cresting a tree branch, we'd bring it down, we'd bring our like chins up above it, and then maybe kind of move our whole bodies over the tree branch. It would be sort of more of a, yeah, not like immediately a dip, but almost like a half dip. And
yeah,
I talk about branch dips in there's literally, yeah, go ahead, David.
When I was back in college and I did I was doing something for the police department, like some training thing, and you have to go over a fence, like a 6 foot fence. And I think I've never done that before.
Snitching on people in college. Underage drinking. You're doing that for the police department.
Listen, when I was in high school, in high school, I used to be the one giving out detention for latenesses.
Oh my gosh,
that was you.
That's hysterical.
Oh man,
you would make money? That's even
worse. I
you
were like a dirty cop
already, right? No, but I think in that sense, instinctually, the people I saw that everybody that was going before me in this obstacle course, when they would go up the 6 foot fence, would do that. Right. Like they wouldn't sort of like pull themselves up into like a dip and go over. It was more of like pull yourself up to maybe your chin, put one leg over, and then climb.
Right,
like
exactly.
It's something that just happened.
And this is the craziest thing, is when you see things through this lens, I literally feel at some points like I've gone through the Matrix. Like I see the green numbers in the gym scrolling down on the squat racks, because once you start seeing things through these lens, I'm guessing you guys don't as frequently have clients do dips because they're not as good for the shoulder. Now, maybe you have clients do dips. But the reason why a traditional dip, and I'm going to try to articulate this for like a listener, but a traditional dip, you're grabbing the dip apparatus with your knuckles sort of facing each other. Like, so your thumbs are parallel, I guess. And what happens there, I'm going to try to like both make it visual and audio at the same time. What happens there is as you're going down, you'll feel an internal rotation in the shoulder, right? Mm-hmm. Internal rotation, one of the big culprits for shoulder pain and impingement in general. So you start feeling this internal rotation as you go down into a dip. But when you rotate your hands so that your thumbs are sort of touching each other, like so that they're running in line and your knuckles are facing front, as if you were pushing yourself up a branch, your shoulder it can't internally rotate as much. It's protective. So it forces the scapula to drop. It forces like a different set of muscles to engage to actually execute that dip, because we would never do dips. Like we would never push ourselves up.
There wouldn't be
parallel
like two
branches.
parallel. Yeah,
exactly. It's one branch. We had to grab that one branch. Imagine a tree.
If
and
you can
push
hold
ourselves.
Yeah. Because generally they might be wider than our actual grip in the first place, but either way, the orientation would be kind of like forward, right?
Angel, your sentence was complete pretty much complete gibberish because I don't know if that was just me. Jock, did you hear?
I heard his lag too. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you got a little bit of lag.
No, it's okay.
Oh, you're just sad now. I've seen
that
that face before.
Run that back. So you're there?
Yeah.
Because there are no two parallel branches in nature, or it's not likely that there were two parallel branches in nature. So the orientation. Go ahead.
Exactly. We had to go up one branch. And as a result of that, we sort of pushed ourselves up in this single movement. But like there's the evolutionary perspective. That's the matrix being seen. But from just a kinesiological perspective, less internal rotation of the shoulder blade when doing that, which explains why a dip like that is way, way, way better for the shoulder than a traditional dip. And I include some of these in the book. I include exercises. I include like pictures of these things. So you can literally see it on like a chapter, it's somewhere in chapter 3 of this book where the difference in internal rotation is noticeable from the side. You can actually see your shoulder flare out during a traditional dip, or you see your elbow flare back during a traditional dip. Whereas one of these branch dips, it goes to the side. Less internal rotation, less space in the AC joint. There's just or more space in the AC joint. It's so much better, but there's an evolutionary reason for that.
Yeah, there was a couple of points. I think, Jacques, you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
No, all I was going to say is on the topic of dips, I think it's quite interesting because I don't know if it was, I know when I first got to Equinox, you were there, you taught a workshop about evolutionary movements, and one, as you said, was a pull-up.
Yeah.
And the exact example that I stick to this day thinking about when you were pulling yourself up, you won't pull your head through the branch, right? You would pull yourself up. And that's sort of how I've always scoped my pull-up still to this day, actually, because I know I had reached a point where I could pull through if I did like handles or pull-ups, and I'd be fine. And then after a certain point, I don't know if it was just something that flared up and inflammation, but going forward, I've never been able to do it. But where I was going with that was with the dips, for example. So I don't know if it was yourself or someone else, but spoke about dips. As you mentioned, if you were doing dips completely vertically, and almost, as you said, pushing through what really isn't enough space for your AC joint to move properly. But I've seen those that tilt themselves forward almost to try and improvise and create more space in the shoulder joint. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And also, what are your thoughts on if this is transferable to dips on, say, gymnastics rings, where you can bring your elbows out to the side, which you were just touching on?
So for the first part of that, I mean, someone who's doing that is naturally falling into that intramuscular memory, right? They're going back to patterns that our ancestors evolved to do. Because when you go straight up and down vertically on a dip, it closes up the joint. Whereas when you start leaning forward, it does it less so. When you move your hands and start leaning forward, it does it less so, because if you were doing a dip, and we're relating this to evolution, you'd be doing a dip up above a branch. You would be literally above the branch.
Right.
So you would be pitched forward a little bit, because if you were vertical, like you would never be pushing yourself onto a branch that's sort of like by your belly button downwards, right? Your branch would be above, you would have your chest above it, and then you'd be just creating enough space. You'd be pushing yourself up just enough to probably swing your leg around. And that swinging of the leg motion can be incorporated into a dip. Now, all of a sudden, you've got tons of core engagement in a dip exercise. And a client is going to, like, if you're a trainer and you do this branch dip, I call it, with a little bit of a leg engagement, now you're working hip mobility for the client. And additionally, you're getting tons of core engagement. And additionally, they're going to feel really tired afterwards because they've just basically worked their whole shoulder complex, their scapula complex, they've worked their core, they've worked their hips. And we've done one exercise. Like, I have not done a plank in like 3 or 4 years. And yet my core looks better than it's ever looked in my life, for sure. Now, part of that is because I'm only having donuts like once or twice a week rather than 3 or 4 times a week. I do love.
They don't live in Manhattan.
Yeah. So that's part of it. But honestly, a much bigger part, and I can like see aesthetically the difference. I've not done a floor-based ab exercise in 3 years or 4 years. no planks, no sit-ups, no bicycles, no leg lifts, no nothing. I'm just, even some of my cable exercises, there's one I call the anchored cable row, which again is easier to see. It's in the book. I'm hyping the book up. You can download it for free, so I don't need to push sales, but
pump those tires, man. Pump those tires.
In that thing. Angel's got it. Angel's got a copy of the book that he's showing. Yeah, there are exercises just like that where you can actually see the core engage
that's the
as
one?
you're doing a pull. That's not my favorite one. That is one. Angel's showing an exercise that's basically like a floor-seated overhead pull. I guess that's the best. An anchored cable row is one where you're at a cable machine. The handle is up really high. You anchor your foot on the cable machine. So you're like stepping vertically on the cable machine. For people watching it, Angel's actually pulling up a picture of it. So your foot is on the cable machine and you're doing a row sort of downward. It's like half row, half lat pull down from an overhead position. And it is just, I do these 3 to 4 times a week, I would say. And I only go to the gym 3 to 4 times a week. Like I'm doing them all the time. So much core, glutes, lats, rhomboids, traps, arms, everything. If I do pull-ups, I'll try to do it with sometimes I'll do it with like a little toe tap. So I'll pull myself up and then tap my toe up. Now I'm working core, I'm working glutes, I'm doing stability. I'm working a more eccentric load because it's slower. And when I'm working out, I will do, no joke, 4 to 6 exercises per session. And I feel better. I feel healthier. My shoulder, I have objectively better movements of shoulder, like range of movement measurements of my shoulder. My right shoulder, I don't know if you remember this, Angel. My right shoulder was really kind of jacked up when I first started at Equinox.
Yeah, and you had a broken collarbone as well, right? I was also thinking about like if these things may have played a role in you like bringing this book to life as well. Like if you've had injuries or anything like that, and that's pushed you to the point where you're just like, I need to figure out a better way to move, and other people need this as well.
Right. That's like Freudian. It's like, maybe I never realized that I was actually looking for my mother's love. Oh my God, you're hitting me with something deep that maybe I didn't even realize that this book was related to my own imbalances in my shoulder. But no, you're right. And it was from traumatic injuries. My back, I think, literally got hurt. I can't prove this, and I will not slander a company. So I'm going to go with like we'll call it, can I call it seven banners amusement park? 7 just like Spirit Bike, 7 banners amusement park. I was on one of their roller coasters and I came off as in middle school and my back hurt, and I've had back problems on and off since. They really got bad when I was training for my triathlons because I was doing so much long distance cycling. I think it was initiated from the roller coaster and then manifested as I was doing more like aero position triathlon cycling and regular cycling. But yeah, I've had back problems and I'm very stubborn. I mean, you sort of have to be to write, but I'm very stubborn. I was trying to learn to wakeboard or water ski or one of those things. And my friend's dad was also stubborn and competitive, different friends, and he gassed it. And I just didn't let go. And I think it kind of dislocated my right shoulder and popped back in, maybe like subluxed. I forget what the exact term is, but
subluxation.
Exactly. So that jacked up my shoulder ever since then. And that led to the problems that, Angel, you saw in my like range of motion measurements when I first started at Equinox. And my right shoulder isn't perfect by any stretch. My left shoulder still has better mobility, but it's so much better.
This is definitely a segue, but I remember when we first started and I was your EquaFit clearance and I was supposed to be the client and you were supposed to be the trainer. Do you remember that by any chance?
I think I got in trouble for touching you inappropriately. Was that it?
No, it was not it. But you had me take my shirt off. Like,
so basically was it?
Way early into it. It's like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, so we're just gonna check your body fat percentage, and you just took my shirt off. He's like, oh, let's just take your shirt off. So I took my shirt off or whatever, and we do the measurements. And then afterwards, he was like, yeah, just keep it off because we're gonna do some other stuff. And then we had like a full-on conversation. It was like pretty much 45 minutes with me with my shirt off. Yeah, and I was like, I don't know if this is the way it's supposed to go.
Yes, and that is how Angel landed a $7.3 million lawsuit against taking the Fitness by Darwin. You heard it here first, folks. This is how empire came crumbling down.
All right. So on another note, to kind of like combat that one, like a positive, Collin was the only or one of the only people to reach out to me when the pandemic hit to offer me like shelter from New York City when COVID hit. So him and his family offered me to go over to Connecticut and stay away from the city. So that's the other side of Collin. There's one that's, you'll be shirtless for 45 minutes. And then the other side is we'll shelter you when, and that's an apocalypse thing too, right? Like that.
It's like a
90 apocalypse. I mean, David was
like
dying.
90-10 split.
Doc went to Jersey, but Collin offered me shelter in Connecticut. So
yeah, it was bad, wasn't it? Especially in New York. I mean, Connecticut got hit as it sort of does with the fringes of it, but man, it was bad a few months ago.
Yeah. Not to segue too much, but did we have there was a couple of the point I'm in the book right now, it's the rat meathead study. So just to give you a reference as to where I'm at, so I'm closer towards the end, and I don't want to ask questions predominantly about the rat meathead study because I feel like everybody should check it out, and it's also like a cliffhanger. People are like, what is this study? So rat meathead study.
Meathead study. Oh my god, I like that. That's a good tease. Truly, that's a good one.
But I want to know, like towards the end of the book, is there some way, like I know that you've sprinkled in some exercises and given physiological and also evolutionary backing to these exercises. I'm wondering for the average gym goer, is there a way, I know that some of these exercises are hard, right? Like, so for example, holding onto a bar or hanging from a bar might be a difficult exercise for some of our clients to do.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there are some people who are just like rock stars and they're, they've been in shape, they're able to rock and roll, do the toe tap, all that stuff. Is there kind of like a way or a point in the book where you talk a little bit about getting from where you're at right now to accomplishing some of these exercises or regressions or anything like that? I'm just curious. Obviously, you should talk to a coach, personal trainer, reach out to Collin Carroll for that help. But is there a point in the book where they speak about that?
There's definitely an element of like, I try to, it's tough because when you're doing a book like this, you're speaking to a very broad audience. You're speaking to the person who has never been in the gym, is intimidated by the gym, and is like, where can I get what baseline could I sort of form? Then you're also looking at somebody who's, one of you three guys who's been working out their whole life, who can speak intimately to both the scientific and the, personal connection that they have with fitness. So I tried to bridge the gap by giving maybe 4 to 6 exercises per chapter that I felt like most everyone can do. Now, there are some like rock star exercises, a pull-up with leg engagement is amazing, but you have to be a certain level of fitness to get there. I would probably, what I'm going to do is Fitness by Darwin will be it's my Instagram and YouTube handles. So I'm going to continue to put out exercises that I think are of varying levels that hit these evolutionary exercise standards. So that will be the next step. Everyone who wants to, feel free to subscribe to that. Now that the book's done and my 2 papers are done, and those are peer-reviewed papers, I'm very proud of those in my own little way. Super. I've been such a, you have to understand, I don't want to talk myself too much up, but I've been living at home with my parents for 3.5 years. And people are like, what is Collin doing? And I'm like, writing a book and some papers. And they're like, oh, do you want to move out maybe, or start a life alone or something? Or do you want to keep bumming off them? So I'm trying to take a little bit of a victory lap, but you can check those out. In the book, there are a few keys, like the anchored cable row. Once you get the book, once you look at that, download it, whatever it is, that should be done by everyone all the time. It can be first time exerciser, they're going to get how to do it intuitively. And this is part of the other thing, is you don't really need to coach it. As we were talking about with these different climbing movements and what I talk about in chapter 5, some different carrying movements, people can intuitively understand, because we've been doing it for so long, just, pull this thing closer to you. And they'll start moving their legs. They'll start using their butts when they get tired as like part of the moving, as part of the mechanism to move the weight. They'll use their backs. They'll drop their scapulas. They'll keep their spines straight. All of these things happen because the human body was sculpted by similar movements. So climbing exercises, there's a wide variety of them that I do. But there are a few exercises that are in the book, like the anchor cable row, like a couple of the other, like the seated row that you had shown, just literally a seated row, a lat pull down. Those are all a marriage of my sort of scientific evolutionary ideas and existing gym exercises. So that's the first part. As for the second part, there are just a few key takeaways that I believe everyone, and I think the evidence points to, everyone should start moving towards. Like, pull way more than you push. Do it with your clients. Do it yourself. We have been, and the book also talks a bit about how we got to this point where men were expected to just lift heavy in the weight room, and women were just expected to do a bunch of cardio. And that was the bifurcation that sort of came in the 70s, right? Like, look at Arnold versus like the aerobics instructors of that era, and see how that sculpted so much, pardon the pun, sculpted so much how everyone views working out. So pull more than you push. That's number one.
Frequency wise, you mean?
What was that?
In terms of, just so for our listeners, so they can decipher, pull more than you push. We're saying frequency and or load, or?
Well, you'll start to see how load, I think, is one of those things where you just sort of play around with it person to person, but yet like frequency and load. I do right. I would say it's in the book, I put maybe like an 80-20 split, pulling versus pushing. I probably do somewhere like an 85-15, or like for every 6 or 7 pulling exercises, I'll do 1 pushing exercise, and it'll be sort of evolutionary, like a branch dip. I do it I get it. I like changing it up, but I bench once a season. I bench spring, summer, fall, winter. That's it. Whereas pull-ups 3 times a week in the gym. And everyone can probably, who's experienced with fitness, have you ever done a weird exercise or something like that, or remember what it was like to be just in the gym at first? Was it if you were to say the most sore parts, something that really just got jacked up, I've got to imagine it was like shoulders, right? Maybe arms, maybe pecs. When you do something that's a little bit infrequent, that's what I remember I've never felt my back so sore that I can't really move it the next day.
You have to work out with Anthony Jokes. You'll feel your back.
All right, good.
That's true.
Yes, that would be I believe a pro bodybuilder. I'm sure that that's the case. But I don't think it's the same frequency. You talk to an average person with an average workout, people say, I don't know if you've felt it, or you've had clients complain about their shoulders being sore, or their chest being sore. Oh, my wrist was really sore. I genuinely don't think my back will get kind of tired, especially if I do a tough back.
That's because they're doing it infrequently, isn't it?
What?
That something is always sore. Like, let's say you're working out and then your chest is always sore. Wouldn't that be because you just aren't doing it in a frequent way, following a program? Because my legs, when I was really getting into my weightlifting stuff a couple of years ago, when I was really into it, I would never get sore in my legs. I mean, I was squatting 4 times a week.
Yeah, and that's part of. We definitely get used to what we get used to. Right. People who are going to pull are going to be less sore from pulling versus all that other stuff. People who work their legs a lot are going to get more sore when they do an upper body workout because they're not used to it. Mm-hmm. But in terms of frequency as well, I think chests, arms, not arms as much, but chests and shoulders in particular, from all of these pulling movements, there's just an unbelievable amount of taxation that they incur on the joints. When you're pushing that frequently, just think about the types of movement. It's internal rotation. It's like this, that's so dominant. That's so just constant and so rough on the shoulders in the way that I'm guessing no one's going to be telling their clients, like, no, you got to round your shoulders more during this exercise. No, it's like retract your shoulders, pull everything back, and pulling exercises naturally do this. Why do the pulling exercise versus the pushing exercises naturally do this? Because we were pullers, because that's how, even when we fight, really, when you see a video of a street fight, everyone always like starts off getting ready to throw a punch, but it always devolves into people grappling, like pulling at each other. Anytime we are getting into stuff, we're dragging, we're pulling, and honestly climbing. Like overhead pulling is so well equipped that those movements, if you do them with clients, they're going to get less sore from, I would say, an hour of that, an hour of pull downs and anchored cable rows, regular rows, versus an hour of just chest. Most people probably wouldn't subject their clients to an hour of just chest because the chest had less to do as we evolved. And we see it, like, besides the pecs and a couple like really small, like the serratus, do we have many other muscles in our chests? No. Backs, we've got the lats, latissimus dorsi, giant muscles. Traps, giant muscles. The rhomboids, big muscles. Even the anterior part, even the long head of the triceps works for pulling exercises. Biceps work for pulling exercises. So there's a lot of muscle that gets involved just with pulling versus pushing. And you can sort of think it like more muscle will spread out the pain a little bit more. So you can do it more frequently without risking as much injury. And there's one study in the book that I cite where weightlifters who are more, basically if there's a greater anterior versus posterior shoulder strength, like people who are stronger in the shoulders, the front part of their shoulders are, and I don't have this study like word for word, so I don't want to miscite it, but they are more likely to experience shoulder injury in the long run. So you're playing with fire a little bit by pushing as much as you pull. And to what you were saying before, David, I think it's tradition, genuinely, that when you look at these things, we're so bound by tradition, especially things that started in the 70s and continued onwards as bodybuilding got more and more, and the weight room became more and more, captured more and more of the popular consciousness. It's like we've conflated the idea of balance with symmetry. I talk about this. A symmetrical exercise routine is like 50-50 push-pull, right? 50-50 chest back. That's very symmetrical, but it's not balanced. And I think some people would argue, well, we need to be symmetrical. Well, if we need to be symmetrical, we should be walking backwards 50% of the time and walking forwards 50% of the time.
That was going to be one of my next questions.
Look at Kangaroo's legs and look at his arms.
Right. If you were to make a perfectly symmetrical recipe for chocolate chip cookies, and I'm lifting my own metaphor, perfectly symmetrical recipe for chocolate chip cookies, you'd have a cup of flour, a cup of butter, a cup of chocolate chips, a cup of sugar, and a cup of salt.
Don't worry about grabbing pen and paper because that's in the book. So I'm plagiarizing myself here. That's not how you make chocolate chip cookies. That's crazy. We don't walk backwards as much as we walk forwards. We don't make everything in equal proportions. We need to have balance, which is not the same as symmetry. We need to have a proper proportion rather than a completely equal proportion. And I argue that because the human body was needed to pull so much, proper proportion would be like, if you were to say it in the traditional terms, and I know I'm going back to tradition, but like, if you were to say traditional terms, it would be pull, push, pull, break, pull, push, or honestly, like pull, push, pull, break, pull, push, pull. And you just repeat that. That's only for upper body. And that's just not, it's not exactly what I'm saying, but just for people to get an idea that would be a better proportion than just pull, push, break, pull, push, break. So that's where I come from. Pulling was way more important for humans as we developed.
pushing was way less. So in the gym, we should be pulling way more. That's just chapter 3. There's stuff on carrying we haven't touched and stuff on running we haven't touched. But there are these, we're so bound by tradition, but the science doesn't necessarily support that.
It's well, I want to chime in real quick on 2 of those points. I remember speaking to someone about strength and conditioning at certain colleges, and there wasn't necessarily, I can't remember who it was that told me, but it was just pretty much he pretty much spoke about, oh, this school or this coach had most of his athletes do work on the machines. Why? Because that's the way it's always been done. And
that's
why?
It's always been done.
Because it's the way it's always been done, and that school has been successful, let's say, in those sports.
Right.
So the method, to the outsider, the method isn't broken, right? So that was the point they made. And then I really liked how you touched on, we don't walk backwards. I like to use that one as well, because that's the argument when, let's say, a client may ask, oh, why do we do more pulling than pushing? And one of the first responses is,
I said so.
One, because I said so, right? But also
very paternalistic, David.
Because we said, because this is our job. You're paying me. No, but because also, as you just said, well, if we had a symmetrical way of moving in life, we'd be walking backwards outside our houses, right? We'd be walking backwards down the stairs, which we don't do, and everything is so dominantly on the anterior side of our bodies that, hey, if there are 168 hours in a week, if you spend 4, maybe, I don't know, 8 hours a week in the gym, let's work on those few hours to try and neutralize it or balance it out a little bit of the anterior dominance.
100%. Although, honestly, this is how the fitness industry works, is that you come up with the backwards walking, like copyright, shock, backwards walking.
Fitness class. Everyone's
fitness class. Everyone's doing it in the UK. It's huge in the UK. Everyone's walking backwards.
That's how I get everyone to do it.
That's how you get. You would have $1 million a year for 3 years until people figure out the next.
David, you know what I'm talking about, right? With the walking backwards and it being like dead people or something like that. Like you can't walk backwards because it's like one of those things, like you go underneath a ladder and it's bad luck. Don't they say if you walk backwards, you're like,
I've never heard that.
Like you're either like promoting dead people or like you're promoting your own death, which honestly it has some basis. It might be, but it might have some basis.
Jack
like
and I are like,
looking
what
where you're
are
going.
He's like a Hispanic.
I mean, you might blow up in Europe. Maybe that'll blow up in Canada, but
Jack and I are colonial senses are
South America or Central.
That's so funny. You very well could be right. That's so interesting that you would say that. Jack and I definitely, literally, I can see the 4 of us on screen, and Angel and David are kind of like nodding a little, and Jack and I are just wide-eyed, like, what?
I am surprised. That's something I learned today.
Like, what? I thought we were supposed to suppress all that culture shit.
So let me come up to you guys up in Harlem and start walking backwards. We're like, ooh.
People
You're going to have everybody in the corner, all the grandmas like, oh, just me.
Walking under ladders and black cats underneath my arms, like, woo.
I love black cats.
Yeah. That's funny. That's a good question, though. It's so funny we arrived at that independently, Jacques. Just a similar metaphor.
Similar thought, yeah.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. I know I want to respect your time. I think.
No, I literally I've got time. I can keep going. That's right, listeners. We can do this all day. We can call people in.
So how do people get in touch with you and learn more about what you've got going on?
Yeah, I feel like we only touched on the climbing, which is so funny. We basically were spending the whole hour that I was here talking about climbing, which I'm all in favor of because I think it makes a lot of sense and people can make sense of that. Oh yeah, we evolved from apes. Apes climbed. We should do climbing exercise in the gym. So that's great. But there are a few things. I've got a couple papers out. They're way more academic, so they're way less accessible, but you can Google Collin Carroll, and I think you probably would get linked to those. If you're interested in like evolutionary biology, those try to use the performance gap in sport between men and women to try to determine which movements the human body evolved to do. I like talking about those. Collin at fitnessbydarwin.com is my email. So feel free to send me an email. You can go to fitnessbydarwin.com and you can just download the book if you want. You can follow the Instagram, YouTube, etc. I really am not that great about it now, and I don't like doing it. I don't like posting. I don't like the sites. I don't have a personal Instagram, but I'm going to try to do more of that so that people can start to see rather than just read what types of movements are good, what types of things should I be doing. If you have a fire in Southwest Connecticut, there's a chance that I respond to that because I'm a volunteer firefighter. If you have a medical emergency, volunteer EMT. If your child is taking the SAT or ACT, I tutor that. I really feel like a Barbie sometimes. Like today, I'm going to be firefighter Barbie. Today, I'm going to be personal trainer Barbie. Today, I'm going to be evolutionary biologist Barbie.
So
I don't know why I didn't
Collin
use
just
G.I.
lost
Joe.
it, guys.
Buildsy, don't forget.
Yeah, right,
Buildsy.
right. If you go on Amazon, you can download Slaps. You can buy Slapsy or Buildsy, which are 2 games that I invented for my dad's small family toy company.
Nice.
Which Buildsy is actually fun, but Slapsy is good, but Buildsy is legitimately fun. It's a speed building game,
That's dope.
yeah.
We played that New Year's, didn't we?
I think we might have played Slapsy because Buildsy wasn't out yet. That was back in 2019.
Buildsy, you're supposed to build what?
It's a speed building game. So
you did bring a demo. You bought a demo of Buildsy.
We might have.
Yeah, you did that in 2019.
100%.
Came over to my place and then we just laid it out and we did it.
This is where Jock jumps in. And he says it was super fun, right, Jock?
Wait, was I there? Was that for New Year's?
That was fun.
Sponsored by Budweiser and Corona.
You might have been there, but it was good. It's
I
good.
don't remember.
I think David, I think everyone was there. I don't know.
I legit love the game.
Okay, thank you, Angel. Thanks, Angel.
It's fun.
It was so
fun. I forgot we played.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's New Year's, so yeah, exactly. As Jock said, there might have been other reasons you forgot you played.
Yeah, true.
It was
Sponsored
like
by Corona.
essentially there are a few different ways to play. My favorite is you'll turn over these structure cards. Everyone has these 8 block set pieces, so there are like 32 blocks in total, 4 identical 8 block sets. So you'd have 4 teams of 2, and one person on each team flips over a card, and there's a structure on it, and they have to like describe how to build the structure. So put the blue piece at the bottom.
I
flip
played that.
Nope,
that was
flip
fun.
it 90 degrees. Okay, thank you.
That was very fun. I remember playing that.
Thank you, Angel and David. Only.
That was really fun.
We'll play it again soon. That's for sure.
Yes. No, Jack, you did. We're all very game. That was before it was really made. You guys were all very game to play it, and I really appreciate you always giving that support. So yes, Slapsy and Buildsy are on Amazon. Buildsy's my favorite. That one took a while. I was designing that in 2016, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Those are there. Honestly, I think the Fitness by Darwin stuff is what I'm most interested in. The papers were peer reviewed, so I'm really, on a personal level, proud of those in a different way because I self-published Fitness by Darwin. I will be completely honest. I queried 50 agents, and they were like, "Yeah, no, it's gonna be a." We've got it. Sorry, how'd you get this number? So I self-published that. The book was just something I knew I would get done eventually and release eventually, but the papers passed the peer review process. The most recent one is about rock climbing. Like, women are exceptionally good rock climbers, exceptionally good in a way that you don't see in any other sport. It's so wild where you'll see there are articles that pop up on my Apple News all the time that it's like, this woman just climbed El Capitan in Yosemite, this one particular route, fast, like better, quicker, like did it in this one route. She was the second person to ever do it, or the first person to ever climb this route in El Cap was Lynn Hill. So
right.
That comes down to the fact that both species are so shaped by climbing that you'll see this exceptionality in female rock climbing ability, which is basically, I think these papers are interesting, interdisciplinary sort of, let's look at the performance gap in sport and see what that could tell us about evolution. So they're very kind of heady and they're not fun to read. You can't throw in a pun or a metaphor in an academic paper.
They're fun to read.
Angel?
Your book has a lot of puns. Your book has a lot of jokes. And I heard it through your voice as I'm reading it.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, here it comes. A gym that I will not name. unless blah 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 blah.
No, don't ruin it. Don't ruin it. But yeah, that's all I'm doing, man.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. We would love to have you on in the future to, hopefully talk a little bit more about the other parts of the other parts, or your next book. Who knows? You guys, you've been such great hosts. Thanks so much. No,
thanks,
thank you.
Collin. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for your time.
Soon.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
See ya.
That was awesome.
Cool stuff.
Cool.
So there's a lot to dive into. I want to send links, at least in the YouTube. So those of us who are watching the video, there will be links at the bottom to both his research paper and also to his website where you can download the book for free. And that's about it. We'll call it here, and we'll catch you guys next time.
All right, guys. Be safe.
Later.
All right, guys.